Al-Andalus, also known as Muslim Spain or Islamic Iberia, was a medieval Muslim cultural domain and territory occupying at its peak most of what are today Spain and Portugal. At its greatest geographical extent in the 8th century, southern France, Septimania, was briefly under its control. The name more generally describes parts of the Iberian Peninsula governed by Muslims at various times between 711 and 1492. Though the boundaries changed constantly as the Christian reconquista progressed. Following the Muslim conquest of Hispania, Al-Andalus, then at its greatest extent, was divided into 5 administrative units, corresponding roughly to modern Andalusia, Portugal and Galicia, Castile and Leon, Navarre, Aragon, the county of Barcelona, and Septimania. As a political domain, it successively constituted a province of the Umayyad Caliphate, initiated by the Caliph al-Walid I, the Emirate of Córdoba, the Caliphate of Córdoba, and the Caliphate of Córdoba's Taifa kingdoms. Rule under these kingdoms saw a rising cultural exchange and cooperation between Muslims and Christians, with Christians and Jews being subject to discrimination and, during times of persecution, paying a special tax, or jizya, to the state, which provided internal autonomy and offered certain protections by the Muslim rulers. Under the Caliphate of Córdoba, Al-Andalus was a beacon of learning, and the city of Córdoba became one of the leading cultural and economic centers in Europe and throughout the Mediterranean basin and the Islamic world. A number of achievements that advanced Islamic and Western science came from Al-Andalus, including major advances in trigonometry, astronomy, surgery, pharmacology, and other fields. Al-Andalus became a major educational center for Europe and the lands around the Mediterranean Sea, as well as a conduit for culture and science between the Islamic and Christian worlds. For much of its history, Al-Andalus existed in conflict with Christian kingdoms to the north. After the fall of the Umayyad Caliphate, Al-Andalus was fragmented into a number of minor states and principalities. Attacks from the Christians intensified, led by the Castilians under Alfonso VI. The Almoravid Empire intervened and repelled the Christian attacks on the region, deposing the weak Andalusi Muslim princes and included Al-Andalus under direct Berber rule. In the next century and a half, Al-Andalus became a province of the Berber Muslim empires of the Almoravids and Almohads, both based in Marrakesh. Ultimately, the Christian kingdoms in the north of the Iberian Peninsula overpowered their Muslim neighbors. In 1085, Alfonso VI captured Toledo, starting a gradual decline of Muslim power. With the fall of Córdoba in 1236, most of the south quickly fell under Christian rule, and the Emirate of Granada became a tributary state of the Kingdom of Castile 2 years later. In 1249, the Portuguese reconquista culminated with the conquest of the Algarve by Afonso III, leaving Granada as the last Muslim state on the Iberian Peninsula. Finally, on January 2, 1492, Emir Muhammad XII surrendered the Emirate of Granada to Queen Isabella I of Castile, completing the Christian reconquista of the peninsula. Although Al-Andalus ended as a political entity, it left a lasting influence that can be seen in the cuisine, architecture, gardens and textiles of Spain and Portugal, particularly in Andalusia. Etymology. The etymology of Al-Andalus is disputed, as is the extent of Iberian territory encompassed by the name over the centuries. The name is first attested to by inscriptions on coins minted by the new Muslim government in Iberia, circa 715. At least 3 specific etymologies have been proposed in Western scholarship, all presuming that the name arose after the Roman period in the Iberian Peninsula's history. Their originators or defenders have been historians. Recently, linguistics expertise has been brought to bear on the issue. Arguments from toponymy, history, and language structure demonstrate the lack of substance in all following proposals. and evidence has been presented that the name predates, rather than postdates, the Roman occupation. Vandal theory. The name Andalusia or Vandalusia is traditionally believed to be derived from Vandal. The proposal is sometimes associated with the 19th-century historian Reinhard Dozy, but it predates him and he recognized some of its shortcomings. Although he accepted that al-Andalus derived from Vandal, he believed that geographically it referred only to the harbour from which the Vandals departed Iberia for Africa, the location of which harbour was unknown. Visigoth theory. In the 1980s, the historian Heinz Harm, also rejecting the Vandal proposal, originated an innovative alternative. Harm took as his points of departure ancient reports that Germanic tribes in general were reported to have distributed conquered lands by having members draw lots, and that Iberia during the period of Visigothic rule was sometimes known to outsiders by a Latin name of Gothica source, whose meaning is Gothic lot. Harm thereupon speculated that the Visigoths themselves might have called their new lands lot lands, and done so in their own language. However, the Gothic language version of the term Gothica source is not attested. Harm claimed to have been able to reconstruct it, proposing that it was *Landalouts. Harm then suggested that the hypothetical Gothic language term gave rise to both the attested Latin term, Gothica source, and the Arabic name, al-Andalus. However, Harm did not offer evidence that any of the language developments in his argument had in fact occurred. Atlantis theory. Another proposal is that Andalus is an Arabic language version of the name Atlantis. This idea has recently been defended by the Spanish historian Valve, but purely on the grounds that it is allegedly plausible phonetically and would explain several toponymic facts. Valve writes, Arabic texts offering the first mentions of the island of al-Andalus and the Sea of al-Andalus become extraordinarily clear if we substitute this expressions with Atlantis or Atlantic. The same can be said with reference to Hercules and the Amazons, whose island, according to Arabic commentaries of these Greek and Latin legends, was located in Jaf al-Andalus, that is, to the north or interior of the Atlantic Ocean. The island of al-Andalus is mentioned in an anonymous Arabic chronicle of the conquest of Iberia composed 2 to 3 centuries after the fact. It is identified as the location of the landfall of the advance guard of the Moorish conquest of Iberia. The chronicle also says that island of al-Andalus was subsequently renamed Island of Tarifa. The preliminary conquest force of a few hundred, led by the Berber chief, Tara Abu Zura, seized the first bit of land they encountered after crossing the Strait of Gibraltar in 710. The main conquest force led by Tariq ibn Ziyad followed them a year later. The landfall, now known in Spain as either Punta Marroquí or Punta de Tarifa, is in fact the southern tip of an islet, presently known as Isla de Tarifa or Isla de las Palomas, just offshore of the Iberian mainland. This testimony of the Arab chronicle, the modern name Isla de Tarifa, and the above-mentioned toponymic evidence that Andalus is a name of pre-Roman origin taken together lead to the supposition that the island of Andalus is the present-day Isla de Tarifa, which lies just offshore from the modern-day Spanish city of Tarifa. The extension of the scope of the designation, al-Andalus, from a single islet to all of Iberia has several historical precedents.